Now, Donald Trump has become the third president in the U.S. history to be impeached. The House of Representatives says the president abused his power and obstructed Congress. Mr. Trump has condemned the proceedings and continues to deny any wrongdoing.
There's no crime, right? There's no crime. I'm the first person to ever get impeached, and there's no crime. I feel guilty. You know what they call it? Impeachment light. It's impeachment light.
Mr. Trump now faces a trial in the Senate which will determine whether he remains in office. And the Senate is controlled by the Republican Party.
Proceedings could begin as early as next month. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she might delay the trial until it was certain the upper chamber will give the case a fair hearing.
And our correspondent Simon Marks joins us live from Washington right now. Simon, what's been the reaction so far to this impeachment?
Well, there's a lot of shenanigans underway here. We'll get to those in a moment. But President Trump's reaction, as you heard it there, was delivered during an astonishingly long, more than 2-hour speech that he made at a rally in the aptly named Battle Creek, Michigan last night. He even paused in the middle of the speech to glance down and learn the outcome of the votes up on Capitol Hill that consigned him to the history books for all the wrong reasons. Only the third president ever to be impeached by the House of Representatives. He, of course, insists, as you heard there, that this is impeachment light. There was no crime. His communications with the government of Ukraine and President Volodymyr Zelensky were, as he has long maintained, perfect. The White House went even harder against the Democrats, insisting that this is one of the most shameful political episodes in the history of the United States. Democrats were somber, or at least were forced to be somber by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, when the outcome of the votes were announced. At one point, she waved them down after she announced the outcome of the first charge, abuse of power, against President Trump, because they were all about to cheer. And, of course, Democrats had been saying all day long that impeachment was a very serious and somber business, and they took no joy in the process that they were going through. So she made sure that no joy was being taken. And now, of course, the argument begins about what comes next, Glenda.
Yeah, and speaking of what comes next, Simon, why is Nancy Pelosi holding out on taking the trial to the Senate?
Because she's worried that she could deliver, if she's not careful, a victory to President Donald Trump. Here's what has to happen next. The House of Representatives, they could have done it last night and they didn't. They have to transmit formally the articles of impeachment to the United States Senate. That requires a vote in the House of Representatives. Clearly, like impeachment, it will go right along party lines. The Democrats will pass that resolution if and when they bring it to the House. But they don't want to send it to the Senate until they say they are guaranteed that Republicans are going to hold a fair trial. They've got two worries in that regard. One is they really want to see some top Trump officials hauled before the trial, including the acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, the former National Security Advisor John Bolton, and others. Republicans, of course, have no intention of bringing them as witnesses. Secondly, the Democrats are worried that the Republicans might force former Vice President Joe Biden and other top Democrats to come and testify at the trial. So Nancy Pelosi is asking herself, do I even give him a trial in the Senate, or do I leave President Trump twisting out there in the wind, impeached by the House of Representatives, but at no point soon given an opportunity to be exonerated in the U.S. Senate, where, of course, Republicans are in the majority? Buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride on the road to that Senate trial, if it ever happens.
Yeah, thanks very much for putting that in context for us. Simon Marks speaking to us from Washington, D.C. And for more analysis, Alastair Newton, co-founder and director of Alavan Business Directory, joins us live from Livingston, Zambia, for more on this. Just to back up a second, Alastair, tell us a bit more about the significance of this impeachment.
Well, it's significant in the sense that the Democrats have done what a lot of Democrats wanted to do ever since the outcome of the 2016 election was known. And therein, of course, lies one of the big problems, because as Donald Trump and his allies have frequently remarked, there have been many Democrats, not Nancy Pelosi, let it be said, who seem to have been determined to try and overcome the outcome of the 2016 election ever since it became known. And in that respect, I'd have to say that the Democratic decision to impeach, notwithstanding Nancy Pelosi's reluctance to go down that track, is just as politicized as the Republican resistance to impeachment and indeed the resistance by the administration itself. We're essentially seeing political theatre played out big time on the big stage in Washington. The good news from a business perspective is that by and large investors are completely ignoring this, although there is some hazard in that Trump, under domestic pressure, is rather inclined to do things like announce new trade tariffs, which can impact on financial markets.
Okay, so saying all that, the Democrats want to ensure that witnesses are brought to the Senate trial if and when it happens. Do you expect this to actually happen, though?
No, I don't. I should just explain, I couldn't actually hear what your Washington correspondent was saying, so I apologize if I duplicate anything which he commented on. It looks very much like Mitch McConnell is going to go for as short a process as he possibly can in the Senate. There has been some pressure from the Trump administration itself to draw this out. They'd very much like to get Joe Biden's son in to give evidence, for example. But I would think that it is most likely to be quick, not least because in the end, the Democrats are probably wanting to get it over quickly, bearing in mind that any Democratic Party senator who is engaged in the primary process, and if I recall correctly, I think there are 5 of them in tonight's Democratic Party debate, they would actually have to forego being on the campaign trail in order to be in the Senate for the trial hearings. So 3rd of February, effectively, first caucus, in fact, in Iowa. That's a kind of deadline as far as some members of the Democratic Party are concerned. So I think it will be short. I don't think there will be any additional witnesses. I certainly don't think it will be what any normal system would regard as being a free and fair trial. McConnell has, after all, admitted that he's working closely with the White House on the process. So I don't think there's any question, barring an absolute earthquake of some sort, that we're going to see probably all 53 Republican senators voting the president as innocent, maybe a couple of Democrats in marginal states joining them. But I guess Pelosi's hope will be that she can break off maybe 3 or 4 moderate Republican senators, because at least if the Democrats were able to get a majority vote, even though they will not get the 2/3 required for a guilty verdict, it would give them some sort of moral victory.
All right, thanks for speaking to us. Some dates to look out for, indeed. We've been speaking there to Alastair Newton, co-founder and director of Alavan Business Directory in Zambia.
Now, still to come.